Hi, so today we're doing the law of sines, actually part 1. So here's the main formula. You'll find this in every textbook. We actually never use it like this. The way we really use it is in pairs. So we could use that, or that, or this. We always only use them in pairs like this. And what's important to understand is not the letters. A lot of the times when we do these, there aren't even letters in the problem. What we got to look at is the pattern. So you want to remember from geometry, if this is angle A, then the side across from it is side A. If this is angle B, then the one opposing it is side B. And if this is angle C, then that must be side C. So what I'm going to be saying a lot is I'm going to be using the phrase opposing pairs. This is an opposing pair. This is an opposing pair. See, these are the combinations we're using. We're really only going to use 2 of these at a time where we have the angle and the side. All right, so give me a second to erase. So let's say we have a triangle, and we'll call it ABC. Then this would be side A, side B, and side C. Now suppose I tell you some information about this triangle. Let's say I tell you this is a 48-degree angle. That's a 48. Hang on. 48. And let's say this is 10 inches. All right, now for part 1, we're going to do it where we're solving for a side. I'll talk more about this later. So that means I have to give you another one of these angles. So let's say I give you angle C, and let's say that that is 40 degrees. And at first, we'll just worry about finding one unknown. So our job is to find side C using the law of sines. So when you're doing this, you don't remember letters. You think, all right, I have this opposing pair, so that's a combo that goes together. So I'm going to do 10 over sine of 48, because that's an opposing pair in that fraction, and that has to equal another opposing pair. So in this case, I know sine angle C, but I don't know side C. So here we have, it's called a proportion. And when we solve a proportion, you cross multiply. Grabbing my calculator here. So I'd have 10 sine of 40 is equal to C sine 48. I'm going to isolate the C, so I'm going to divide by this. And now I just got to punch this in. And I'll just warn you ahead of time, I'm getting C equals 8.65. In this case, it would be inches. Now, if you plug this in and you get this answer, C equals 8.07, you're not being careful with your parentheses. Remember, when you enter your calculator, this into the calculator, it auto opens a parenthesis, and if you don't close it there before you press divided, it's going to mess up the answer because of the order of operations. So you got to be sure to close that parenthesis or do it in 2 stages. But you should practice it. This is the answer we're going to get. All right, so another note to make about this is when you're first starting this, people don't know, like a common question is, how do you know like which ones you're supposed to pick? Well, you got to have it so there's only one unknown. Let's say I'm doing this problem and I go, okay, I see this opposing pair, so I know I'm going to use that, 10 over sine 48. And then let's say I don't know, so I just use the b's. So that would be b over sine of b. See how I have 2 unknowns there? You can't solve for that. So you don't got to memorize it. It's just if you're doing the problem and you have too many unknowns, that was a dead end, and you got to try again. So I know that opposing pair, and you just try the others and see what happens. Right? So, and we already solved that, but that's how you set it up. Okay. So let's try another one. Really, these are not too bad. You just have to learn what the formula is, which is an opposing pair is a fraction, the side over the sine equals another one, and plug it into your calculator. However, there is one that it's not hard, but it's a little bit different. So let's say I give you this information. Let's make it look a little different. Let's do an obtuse one. Suppose this is 120 degrees, and suppose I tell you this is 20 degrees, and I tell you this side is 35 centimeters. Now, to use the law of sines, see, this is an opposing pair, good. And now I'd like to be asking you what this one is, right? And you'd set it up and do what we just did. But if I want to like twist it a little bit, I could ask you, what would be, let's just call it X. What would be the length of that side? And that's a problem because, you know, if I don't, let's name them, A, B, C, then this is, let's see, this would be side C, this would be side A, and this would be side B. So look, I'm asking you what this is, but I don't know the angle. That's too many unknowns. Well, you can't forget your geometry, right? In basic geometry, we know that the angle's got to add up to 180, so that's 140. So that means this has to be 40, and now I'm all good, right? Because I have enough information. So now I can set this up. So I know this opposing pair, 35 over sine 120. And that's going to be, if I want to know this one, that's the unknown I'm searching for. That's the angle I got to use because it's opposite that side. I don't really care about the letters. They have to be opposing pairs. So now this is all set up. I'm going to multiply both sides by sine 40. So personally, I would punch that in like this. And I'll do the button pushing here. And as soon as we knock this out, we'll do the last little bit for this lesson. So I'm getting 25.98, and it must be centimeters because it's a side, and that was measured in centimeters. Okay, so if we're all good up to that point, the last little bit is next you're going to be given different directions. So the directions will say, solve the triangle. So it's important you know what those words mean. Solving the triangle means you have to find everything that you didn't know. So let's go back in time here. We didn't know angle A. None of this was labeled. And that was the information we knew. So now how would I set this up? Well, personally, what I do is I like to put a place for my answers first. So I'm done when I know angle A. This would be side, oh, right, let's rename them. This would be side A, and this would be side C. When I know the answer to these three things, then I'm done with the problem. Well, we already talked about this. This is the easy one, 180 minus 120 minus 20, right? The sum of these has to be 180. So this has to be 40 degrees. And we just busted that out, right? We figured out what C was, but let's just do it again real quickly. So let's see, what did we do? 35 over sine 120 is equal to C over sine of 20. No, I messed that up. My bad. We're trying to find A here, but we could do it either way now. We found A, and this was sine of 40. Okay, so I could certainly do it that way. And what did I get? I think I had, we'll just punch it in again, 35 sine of 40 divided by sine of 120. And I get A is 25.98. And by the way, what I just did, there's a shortcut for this. If you want and you're comfortable with it, instead of doing your algebra, you multiply the two numeric things, these two positions, and then you divide by the one across from the unknown. If that's weird and it's confusing, just cross multiply it and use your algebra, you'll be fine. But that's a shortcut that kind of works all the time. All right, jumping back into the problem, I now know this, 2598. So I got to find one more thing and I'm done. So we're going to use the law of sines again. So this was to get A, now we're going to get C. So let's start out with our known order, our known pair here. 35 over sine 120. And now I'm specifically looking for C, so I have to put the angle opposite here, sine of 20. And this is going to be 35 times sine of 20 divided by sine of 120, because it's across from the unknown. Sine of 120. And my calculator is saying 13.82 centimeters. Okay, so, and by the way, one other thing is the law of sines is our first trig formula where you do not have to have a right triangle. As a matter of fact, this was not a right triangle, and that's why I couldn't use the Pythagorean theorem to get C. I had to use the law of sines to get C. You might, you know, out of reflex, try to use the Pythagorean theorem, but that does not apply here. That is shut down. So be sure you're being careful with that. All right, well, I hope that made some sense. Part 2 will be finding an angle when you know two sides but not an angle. Thank you.